It is a warm welcome to you all. Yes, you are welcome to this webinar entitled the HAQAA2 Quality Assurance Webinar in Online Teaching and Learning, including Assessment. HAQAA means the harmonization of African higher education quality assurance and accreditation. The webinar is organized by the HAQAA Initiative Consortium, which is made up of ANCA, the Association of African Universities, DAD, and the Obreo Global, who happens to be the coordinator of the project, which is funded by the European Union Commission, but a brainchild of the African Union Commission, and is being steered within their political partnership. The webinar is organized in the context of the HAQAA Initiative. The aim of the webinar is to discuss quality assurance of online teaching and learning, including assessment, as I've said before. In particular, the webinar will look at how the guidance provided at continental, regional, national, and institutional levels translate into practical implementation, and how further support could be provided to institutions and quality assurance agencies to develop this aspect of their work. My name is Dr. Violet Makuku of the Association of African Universities. I'm the Quality Assurance Specialist, the HAQAA Initiative Project Manager, as well as the Workshops Coordinator at the Association. Allow me to introduce to you the panelists whom we have here, but before that, there are other people who belong to the consortium members whom I've enlisted earlier. We have Professor Etienne Ehile from Ivory Coast. He is the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities since September 2012. Before that, he was the president of ex-University de Abobo Ajame, now named Nangua Abrugwa, for 2 terms of 4 years in Ivory Coast. Okay, we also have Apio Okwiri, who is the project manager for Africa at Obreo Global. She has worked as a lead consultant on research and education networks in Eastern and Southern Africa, and as a tuning expert in the Tuning Africa and institutional evaluation expert in Europe Africa Quality Connect under the Joint Africa-EU Partnership. She is a former president of the Erasmus Mundus Association Global. With us, we also have Sarah Lang, who is with the DAAD, and Anna Gova, who is with ENQA. We also now go into introducing the people who are going to share with us and push the discussion and the conversation forward. Allow me to start with Professor Florence Lenga at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in Kenya. She is also a member of the HAQAA Initiative Task Force for the African Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance, which is working to develop a user's guide for the guidelines in order to support their implementation in different contexts. Florence was previously Deputy Commissioner Secretary in charge of accreditation and quality assurance at the Commission of Higher Education in Kenya. Next is Dr. Simon Ngalomba, who is a lecturer and researcher in the School of Education in the University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. He holds a PhD from Kenyatta University. He has diverse practical experience and exposure in the field of quality assurance in education. He has been engaged in a number of research projects, including developing internal quality assurance framework in Tanzania and Tanzanian universities. Furthermore, currently he is working on an e-assessment digital portal to identify lecturers' credentials and research-based publications authenticity. We also have Esther Hidalgo is head of Quality Assurance Department at AAU Catalonia in a Quality Assurance Agency in Spain. She was also the chair of the working group on quality assurance and e-learning, coordinated by the European Association of Quality Assurance in Higher Education between 2016 and 2018. The working group developed the guidance on how the European standards and guidelines for internal and external quality assurance, the European version of the African standards and guidelines, could be applied to e-learning. Then last but not least, we have Dr. Stella Appiah from Ghana. Dr. Stella Appiah is the head of the nursing department of the Valley View University. She is responsible for the day-to-day running of the department by assigning courses to faculty, monitoring of faculty, and teaching of students for both face-to-face and online. She's also responsible for maintaining quality assessments of students by conducting internal moderation of questions and providing feedback to faculty. She conducts research on quality nursing education. She's also the lead health advisor, educational and instructional technology support unit of the university to ensure that the team members are safe and observing all protocols of disease prevention. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, it is also very important for me to point out that we picked the panelists from across the continent in order for us to be able to hear from the different parts of the continent. Allow me also to introduce to you Dr. Sanele, who is with the South African Quality Assurance aspect of the Council for Higher Education in South Africa. You are all welcome, our panelists, as well as the participants. At this juncture, allow me to hand over to the next speaker. Thank you. Hello, Appiah.
Violet,
Yes.
Sorry for that. In the program, it was Professor Ile.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this meeting. Violet, thank you for the warm introduction. We take this opportunity to take this moment just to discuss, interrogate, and try to chart a way forward for the African continent when it comes to QA and online education. And now Violet has introduced what is HAQAA. So I'll just mention a few things that we're doing within the HAQAA Initiative. This is the phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 took place in 2015 to 2018. So currently we are working on different teams. We have 2 major teams that are focusing on QA and the activities that are happening on QA. And this is the technical working group that is looking at the setup of the African Continental QA agency. And the second one is the ASGQA task force that is currently working on a user's guide and an implementation toolkit for the African standards and guidelines for quality assurance within the continent. This is ASGQA that is going to be a backbone of this webinar, was one of the output of the phase 1 of the project. Now, again, within the HAQAA project, we have two main activities that are trying to ensure that we have quality professionals within our institutions, within our agency. And one is the IQA training, the internal quality assurance training that is being led by our consortium partner, DAD, that is training staff from the agencies and also training staff from the institutions. Currently, we've done 2 cohorts. We are doing, the training is taking place in 4 different cohorts, 2 for Francophone and 2 for Anglophone. And so we are headed towards the 3rd cohort for the training. The other important activity that is taking place, that is being led by one of our consortium partner, ENCA. Anna is present at the moment, and this is the agency reviews and the consultancy visits. That is, we are planning a training for staff of the agencies and consultancies that will be visited within the project. And the training is going to take place on the 14th of June and the 21st of June. And also a 3rd session will be organized later on within the year. Now, related to this, very critical also for the continent is that 2 major activities that are being led by AAU, the Association of African Universities, and this is as the Association of African University is a coordinator of the continental education strategy for the subcluster of higher education, for the cluster of higher education, and this is, we are coming up with a CESA book series. And also, currently we are running an event series, we're calling it the CESA in Focus, that is focusing on the subclusters within the higher education cluster of the CESA agenda for the continent. And we are going to have our next event on the 10th of June. Now, critically, this webinar comes at a critical point. So we will take this opportunity to interrogate and try to discuss and share ideas and also come up with a way forward for the continent. So thank you for joining us, and please feel free to ask questions, feel free to comment, and feel free to, you are the practitioners, and we are very happy to have you to share also with you the project outputs. Thank you so much, Violet.
Thank you, Apio. Over to you, Professor Eile. Thank you. The Secretary General of the Association of African Universities.
Violet, I can see Jonathan. I don't know whether it's Jonathan that is to give a speech.
Okay, it's Prof. Eile. I will check with him. Maybe he is failing to join, but still.
He's in the participant list, but he'll need to have his microphone rights enabled.
Okay. Eloy, I can let Eloy do that. Okay, fine, no problem.
In the meantime, could I have Prof. Florence Lenga to take over and start the ball rolling? We would try to get Professor Eile at some point. I think he has got connection challenges. Thank you. With us here, let me also acknowledge the presence of
Violet, yeah.
Okay. Hello, Prof. Eile.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can I start, yes, please?
Just a minute. Allow me to introduce Mrs. Nodumotlamini, who is our ICT director at the AAU, and also Professor Jonathan Mba, who is the Director of Research and Academic Planning. Thank you. You can go on, Prof. Eile.
Thank you, Dr. Makuku, distinguished speakers, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Allow me to follow suit with my predecessors and welcome you all the current webinar session, which is part of HAQAA2 webinar series, the third one. The webinar is being rolled out in the HAQAA2 initiative to enable us to take stock at continental level some of the success stories as well as challenges of quality assurance in online UDL teaching and learning. This is also meant to check the interplay between internal quality assurance and external quality assurance during the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak higher education environment. As AAU, this gathering is also another appropriate important occasion to highlight the existing HAQAA Initiative support documents, which include the African Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance and the African Quality Rating Mechanism for Self-Improvement. These tools need to be known and broadly shared in the framework of HAQAA2 in whatever activity we undertake. Finally, today's event gives the HAQAA Initiative Consortium the opportunity to understand the associated at continental level and the kind of assistance or support that may be required as issues of the written policies. The way they are being implemented will be examined to check on alignment. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish us all fruitful discussion and successful HAQAA2 webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Etienne Eile, for the welcoming remarks. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we can now have the ball rolling. I hand over to Professor Florence Lenga, who is going to coordinate the session as well as the question and answer session. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Violet. I welcome all the participants, the audience, our members who have joined us in this forum. And I would advocate that as we go along, please do not hesitate to send in your comments or questions through the chat function. I would want to start off with the panelists straight away, starting off with Dr. Stella Appiah and also Dr. Simon Ngalomba. My first question to the two of you, because you come from higher education institutions, is at least each one of you within just a few minutes to briefly outline the measures your institution has put in place to ensure the quality of online education. Let's start with Dr. Appiah.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Makuku, and thank you for the welcome address by Professor Hile. Thank you, Florence, for having me. I'm from Valley View University in Ghana. It is the first private chartered accredited university in the country, and we have been in existence for the past 42 years, and we are counting. Thank you very much for the opportunity to train men and women for service to the world. We started online learning for a longer period of time, but it wasn't fully rolled until the COVID came. And we made sure that the university put structures in place to ensure quality delivery to our students around the country and even beyond, because the Valley View University serves other countries, Nigeria and Cameroon and others. And so we started with administrative support. The university ensured that structures were in place. And so a whole committee was set up to ensure that the content and all other events surrounding the online learning was effective and had been in place. And so the Valley View University, to ensure quality, has developed a framework, which is a policy which was not there before the COVID, policy to guide the activities of online education. The university, to ensure that faculty, students are also doing the right thing to promote quality, trained consistently, because as you learn more, then you are able to get improved. And so students are trained, faculty are trained to ensure that the content that are put there will be of standard. Also, faculty are encouraged to at least put out content that students are able to be familiar, students are able to become friendly. And so these are some of the measures. We also train our freshers, freshmen and women who come to the university to be able to become conversant with the system so that they don't become frustrated, because whether we like it or not, online learning has come to stay. And so we also ensure that at least 2 courses are taken mandatory by all students online, so that they will always get in tune with the system as it moves. We have also established a whole unit, or let's say directorate, headed by a professor, to ensure that quality measures are followed. And our quality assurance unit of the university is not resting at all, always evaluating students' content that is put out, the assessment modalities that are done, so that students will be able to get what they have paid for in terms of, delivery of content. We also made sure that our online activities are not interrupted. And so internet services, power supply have all been beefed up so that we don't have power cuts. We have standby generators. We spoke with these telecommunication providers so that our internet supply will be consistent for students to be able to get it and even be able to get at a lower rate. So these are some of the measures that we put in place as an institution.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Let's have Dr. Galomba now give us his outline about the online quality education in University of Dar es Salaam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I thank Dr. Makuku for inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm from Tanzania, so before I embark on your question, maybe I should give a brief overview of the higher education in Tanzania. As you may be aware that Tanzania used to be the socialist country following the famous 1967 Arusha Declaration, where all major means of production were nationalized, including education institutions, private institutions, and tend to be public institutions. And under that socialist policy, all educational activities and institutions were under government reserve. So no any private institution was allowed during the Ujamaa or socialist policy. Coming to mid-1990s is for the first time we had the Open University of Tanzania, which was providing education programs through the correspondence, distance and corresponding means. And coming from 1995, it's only when the government allowed the private sector and private institutions to come on board and establish universities, and where we can have the private universities in place. Coming to our the COVID period. First of all, in Tanzania, we didn't experience the lockdown. We just only have the partially, like a 3-month temporary closure of the education institutions. So some of these, for example, right now, we are on sessions where we have physical interaction with students. So most of these most of these initiatives, online initiatives, were only on one institution, which is Open University of Tanzania, where they have the online mode of delivery. And that's where my focus will be. For example, at Open University of Tanzania, currently they embark on purely distance learning mode, where all students, they get their teaching, lecturing through the Zoom platform from their lecturers and professors. No face-to-face meetup at Open University of Tanzania. Lecturing and examinations, they are done online. Actually, when doing examinations, they have two options. You can either do online or you can have paper-based. But in paper-based, you have to pay for that. Actually, they are doing that to discourage people to embark on paper-based, but to move to online platform. So in Tanzania, currently the Open University serve a good benchmarking with regard to online. At the University of Dar es Salaam, the oldest university, which is turning 60 years this year in September, they just formed the committee to embark on advising the university management how they can deal with online. But the committee was given like 3 months since last year, but the feedback from the committee was not shared in public. So at University of Dar es Salaam, what they have selected a few postgraduate studies programs. For example, one on which I participate in teaching is called Postgraduate Diploma in Education, where we normally teach through online, and students, they are supposed to come on campus during the examination period for 2 weeks. But normally the teaching and learning process is done through the online means. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngaliba. The only thing is I did not get it clearly whether the University of Dar es Salaam actually has an online education program or whether it is mainly the Open University of Tanzania. But notwithstanding, can you just tell us how your institutional policies, rules, and guidelines are aligned to the national policies on quality assurance of online education?
Okay, to answer your question first, University of Dar es Salaam, which is the oldest university in the country, they do have online programs, but few selected ones. But the majority of the programs, they are offered through the conventional way, face-to-face mode. With regard to policies, currently the University of Dar es Salaam, they are still, the process is ongoing. They are preparing the policy, but the Open University of Tanzania, they have, and actually they are implementing that. As I said before, that currently Open University, they don't have face-to-face meetups. Students are supposed to log on their portal. They can get the material from there. They can do their examination from there. They can get their lecture from there. And the other links, other administrative announcements, they are communicated through the portal.
Okay, thank you. Now back to you, Dr. Appiah. Tell us also your institutional policies, rules, and regulations, and how they are aligned to your national policies in Ghana on quality assurance of online education.
Thank you very much once again. Yeah, as I indicated earlier, we have to come up with framework, a policy to guide our activities to ensure quality. And good enough, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTEC, came up with areas to ensure that we are delivering quality, and that is appropriateness, availability, accessibility, affordability, and user-friendly. And these are the guidelines of our policy on online education. And so it's consistent with that of GTEC. We also had a quality matters rubric standards from the Florida State University that guided us. And as Valley View University is a Seventh-day Adventist institution, we also have sister universities around the world. And so that have been running online learning for years. And so we drew inspiration from them, from Adventist International Institute of Learning at the Philippines. We also had from the Andrews University in the US. And so in all, our policies and rules and regulations on online learning conforms to that of GenTech and international world so that our quality assurance can be maintained. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, my next question following that, Dr. Appiah, in the operationalization of your institutional and national standards, is there any reference or incorporation to the ASG QA? And if so, how has this been achieved?
Thank you once again. Yeah, if you look at the ASQA, we looked at the standard 8. The standard 8, specifically of the African Standards for Guidelines of Quality Assurance in Higher Education, where we talk about teaching and learning and assessment. And in fact, we look at teaching flexibility. And so we do synchronous and asynchronous when it comes to the online learning. We record the lectures through our big blue button so that students who may have challenges in terms of accessibility may visit the platform anytime at their own time to listen and be able to get the concept. We also use Camtasia to do the recording of lectures so that wherever they are, they can get it, even if they are not able to come face-to-face, the live lectures. We also ensure that we offer students flexibility in terms of assessment. We do continuous assessment where assignments are put so that the students handle them and then post them to us asynchronously. And then synchronously, they can also answer questions online, and we are able to evaluate their performance so that they can go in through the objective of the lesson. We also get feedback from our students. They assess faculty, whether they are present at all times, so that if there are difficulties, we can talk to them. So these are some of the measures we are able to put in place that conform to the standards, the ASF QA in higher education.
I see you have done so much on standard 8 of the ASG QA. How about the standard 7 on design approval, monitoring and evaluation of study programs? How does that come into the designing of your online education? Is it complete, or is it just the teaching, learning, assessment, and management of the online education?
Sure, we also do the monitoring. Of course, you cannot teach and then teach without monitoring. And so I indicated earlier in my submission that our quality assurance units are making sure that faculty are monitored. And even HODs, heads of departments, deans are all given access to the platform of every faculty so that once you are teaching, I'm able to log on to follow you on what you are doing so that the material you are delivering and whatever will be able to monitor to see whether you are doing the right thing or not. And those who have challenges, we have the IT team that are there 24/7 with communication so that they come in to help faculty with those challenges. So we have the monitoring evaluation as part of ensuring quality.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appiah. Now I move on first and foremost to Dr. Nene. Dr. Nene, in the case of the Council for Higher Education in your country, how has the Council incorporated standards and guidelines on online education into institutional quality audits? And how are these aligned to those of the ASG and the QA? I hope I'm not very fast in my question. Dr. Nene.
Well, thank you very much, Prof. Colleagues, where I am, it is afternoon, so I'm going to say good afternoon.
And maybe you raise up your voice a bit so that we can be able to hear you well.
I'm not sure if I'm audible now, Prof.
Okay.
Okay. So the CHE is a statutory body established by the Higher Education Act of 1997. And this act provides for a specific mandate of the CHE, and that is to be the quality assurance body responsible for higher education in South Africa. This act is also supported by the National Qualifications Act, which further expands on the role of the CHE. Now, in doing its work, the CHE has three main functions around quality assurance. One is the auditing of institutional audits. Two is the accreditation of programs. Three is the review of programs at a national level. In terms of the issues around the standards and guidelines, particularly related to the online education, each of the three functions has its own framework and perhaps a manual to support the framework. And each of the framework has a standard guideline and or criteria that stipulates what the institutions are required to look at and respond to in relation to quality. So for instance, in the institutional audits framework, there are at least three standards related to quality assurance of programs, but also specifically of online provision. In the program accreditation, there are also quite a number of criteria that speak to the design of the programs and how that design responds to the mode of delivery and how that is to be quality assured. Now, if you look at the work of the CHE in totality, it is very much aligned to the ASGs because it speaks to how an external quality assurance agency looks into and looks after the sector in terms of quality assurance and how it creates a platform, guidelines, and a framework for the institutions to be able to then address the individual guidelines and standards that are identified in the frameworks. So for example, when we do institutional audits, as part of the ASGs and as part of just international benchmarking and best practice, institutions are supposed to provide what we call a self-evaluation report or self-evaluation reports, depending on what it is, part of programs that they are responding to. And in their self-evaluation reports, they have to indicate how they are responding to each of the standards that have been identified, including those about online education. But I must qualify my input here that we have to be very careful when we speak about online education, because in some instances, in terms of our nomenclature, we can speak of e-learning, which may be different from online education. And we must also say that our approach to these standards is quite different post-COVID and pre-COVID. We now have these two phases that we're now responding to. But we are quite confident that we are very much in line with the ASGs and that institutions are able to respond very effectively to some of these, including identifying what sort of challenges they may be having with regard to responding to online education in the current situation. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, thank you. Now let me just go back to Dr. Ngalomba and also Dr. Apia before I come back to Dr. Nene. Dr. Ngalomba, kindly share the challenges you face when implementing both institutional and the national quality assurance measures on online education. And how are you able to overcome these?
Okay, thank you. The first challenge we face with regard to online, first of all, there's a myth that online learning is the second grade. Actually, the first grade when compared to the convention, the physical meter. So most of the officials at national quality assurance officers or officials, they see that's like a second class education provisions. With regard to the guidelines, for example, in their guideline way back 2013, the way they've structured does not include the online way of assessment. Actually, they stick on the conventional way where the physical meetups is encouraged in the TCU guideline of 2013. Another challenge is that the technological challenges. As you might be aware that higher education institutions, especially universities, they are underfunded in terms of the fund from the treasury, the national treasury. So when it comes to modern technological equipment and facilities, we're well equipped with regard to that particular facilities and in terms of physical facilities and human resources. For example, in the labor market, it's very difficult to attract IT personnel in public institutions compared to the corporate world. So in terms of the salary and fringe benefit is going to get from the public university compared to the corporate. Another challenge is that the political will of the government, for example, especially in African, to create jobs. For example, you know, the issue of technological advancement means that some of the people, they are going to lose their job. The technology, they are going, I mean, is going to replace some of the opportunities, job opportunities for potential, in quotation, potential voters. So some of these politicians, they are not happy with that arrangement because in other countries, for example, they feel that some of these universities, it is a platform, it is an avenue to give opportunities for their potential voters to get jobs. So maybe from the national level, they are not ready to allocate a lot of money to procure modern technological equipment because there's a likelihood that that technology is going to be replaced replace those job opportunities to their potential voters. The same applies to university at institutional level. The way we arrange our priorities, because like you can have, you see some of these officials at the university level, they are ready to buy fuel guzzling vehicles over a mere e-journal access to their students. So you can find universities, they have the physical libraries, they have these VAT vehicles for one official at university, but most of the students, they don't have access to e-learning facilities. So those are some of the challenges on which I think both at national level and at institutional level need to be encouraged. There's a potential with regard to the technological investment. Most of these young students at universities, they are millennials. We call generation Y or X.
Try to be brief, Dr. Ngalomba.
Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Pia, as you answer that question, kindly narrate to us at least 2 notable examples which you consider to be good practices in tackling the challenges in order to enhance quality online education. Thank you.
Thank you too. I would like to begin with, funding as a private university. Engaging in online learning is not a small activity at all. It requires huge funds, capital, because you have to invest in infrastructure. Even the telecommunication companies, the bills they bring is so huge. And so funding is a major challenge. We also had a challenge of online examinations, ensuring that the individual writing the exam is exactly the student and is working independently is another challenge. And looking at these things, we looked at how to overcome this particular challenge by looking at the proctoring, where we monitor. In fact, we have put a lot of systems in place because you have to log in with your own ID before you can get access to the questions. And the questions are set such that individuals will not have similar questions. So we have question banks to be able to do about 100 or 50 randomizations so that my questions are different from yours. We heard in the air that some were grouping at places to answer questions, but they themselves were also attesting to the fact that the time limits were so strict, such that if you want to go and do group work or sit somewhere to search, navigate apart from your place, you cannot enter. So these are some of the measures we put in place. So if you leave or you go out of the Moodle to go and search for answers, by the time you come, you cannot log in and your time will be out. And so these were some of the measures we put in place to ensure that you stay within the focus. We're also strict with the nature of the questions, thinking out of the box so that you don't just copy anything. So the structure of the question itself was also another means by which we used to. Another major challenge was the digital divide, where there's unequal access at the same time. Dr. Nene mentioned that the e-learning platform is accessible, but at the point where students went to their remote areas within the country, you have a challenge where some network will cut off and they have to join later. So we were able to solve this by doing the recorded versions so that they can visit. So we had the blended mode, we have the synchronous and asynchronous, so that people can always visit the platform to get the information. And in fact, those who were able to communicate with our communication unit of the university on online that I was wrongly taken out of during the exam, the IT team will go and follow you. They do what they call auditing to see whether you are genuinely communicating or you are lying. When they realize that you were genuinely taken off, they then will enroll you again to take your exam. So these were the measures we put in place to ensure that these challenges were overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pio. I want to go back now to Dr. Nene so that he can actually also tell us the main challenges that institutions of higher learning face in his country during the implementation of the standards and guidelines on online quality education, and how the council and the institutions overcome this. And at least give us 2 examples, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. The main challenge, I think, is what Dr. Apia and other colleagues are going to identify, and that is the issue of resources. The access to resources, the availability of sufficient and appropriate tools for online education, and how those then get to be distributed and applied at an institutional level. That becomes a very serious problem, because even if you have policies in place with appropriate provisions for quality assurance, if you do not have the resources, it becomes very difficult to implement those. And so this has been a main challenge in the higher education sector in South Africa. Second, again, this is the issue that I think Dr. Apia has touched on. There's a certain high level of inequality in the higher education sector, where some institutions have more resources than others. And therefore some students have better access to resources than others. So to balance provisions in the policy, the resource availability, and also access of students has been an issue, quite a serious issue. But what COVID-19 has also done is to make us realize that, in fact, there's been a disjuncture between not just the resources, but also between the policies themselves in the sector and quality assurance. Whereas we've been focusing on issues around quality assurance, teaching and learning, and with specific focus on blended learning, what the COVID-19 has done is to simply force us to catapult into fully online education that some institutions were not prepared for. And so it's become difficult to implement those policies because some of those policies are inadequate. They do not cover fully online provision and therefore quality assurance. So what the sector has done with the leadership of the Minister of the Higher Education and the Council on Higher Education is to come up with guidelines on how to assure quality during, not just in terms of COVID-19, but as we move forward to a new, what we call a new normal, because we believe the online provision is going to become the new normal. And as a response to this, institutions have created their own policies on how to then respond to the crisis and also online education and how to quality assure this. This includes having regular reviews, internal reviews, so that you don't actually wait for an external agency to tell you what you need to do or where you need to strengthen. So there are regular reviews internally, and many, if not all of the institutions are engaged in this process. It also includes, as a best practice, a sort of a retraining and capacity development of all academic and support and professional staff on the new approach and approaches and pedagogies to online education, so that we don't only just respond in terms of pragmatics and practicalities, but we also respond theoretically, so that these are based on sound theoretical frameworks that enable students to really truly succeed. Because the focus of the entire sector is to quality assure for purposes of ensuring that the students who graduate are of such a quality and possess such attributes that are professionally, individually, and societally valuable for the sector and for the country and for the globe as a whole. So I think the best practices is how we have also been able to get institutions to be flexible in how they assure quality. So as been mentioned before, the idea that online education should be assured in a sense that you have policies has to be supported by an idea that students must have access, not just physical access to the resources, but also epistemological access to these resources and online platforms. And this is what the CHE and the institutions are actually engaged with in this process, but also flexibility in terms of the access to this material. It is not always the case that when you have these resources available online, that students have access to them. We have unfortunately a huge divide in society in terms of rural and urban provision, where in some instances there is no access to the internet, even if the institution provides the devices, where students have to be given different types of material. For example, where they have to be delivered in terms of memory sticks or discs, or whether they have to be posted so that there are no students that are left behind, which is what is a theme from the South African sector, is that no student should be left behind. So we have a multi-pronged approach to assuring quality by ensuring that access of provision and quality assurance of those provisions is continuous, and that it is appropriate for the context in which the institutions find themselves, the individual institutions. So a blanket approach that is supported by contextual considerations.
Thank you, thank you. Now, Dr. Nene, you have touched on the COVID-19 pandemic and what it has brought out in the higher education with regard to online education and some of the achievements that the institutions in your country have brought on board. Can you possibly outline the new avenues of guidance required by quality assurance agencies to further improve the quality assurance of online education, either at a national or continental level?
Thank you, Prof. I'm speaking very strictly from the point of view of the South African higher education sector.
Yes.
Where the government has taken the initiative of providing some guidance in terms of the way forward, particularly around the COVID-19. So when COVID-19 reared its ugly head, the response of the government was to say the sector must immediately and urgently go into what was then termed an emergency remote teaching and learning approach, which then said we cannot have physical classes, face-to-face classes, because we wanted to limit the spread of the virus. And in support of that, the higher education, the Council on Higher Education, then said to institutions, all modes, all programs that have been accredited for modes that are not necessarily online will now be regarded as also accredited for online education. So to remove a potential regulatory hurdle for institutions to not really be worried about whether they are now in violation of their accreditation conditions. And then also the Council on Education adopted and distributed guidelines on quality assurance of online teaching and learning and assessment to institutions to adapt, so that at least there is a common understanding of what we as the sector consider to be quality assurance critical areas that the institutions need to consider to ensure that the students who graduate even during this time are not regarded as students of poor quality because there wasn't any quality assurance. So I would say that there needs to be a political and regulatory support for institutions and even guidance to provide direction so that institutions are not left to deal with these issues individually without necessarily understanding that there's a national way of looking at this and there's national support forums to deal with these issues. At a continental level, I believe the ASGs provide some guidance, but I would also go back to a standard 8 of the ASGs, which I think has been touched upon, and I think maybe it's a favorite standard of ours. And that is to say, perhaps we could look at whether to strengthen that standard such that it is also specific around online education, the same way that it is very specific on open distance learning education. It could be understood broadly from what the standard actually captures now that online education is covered, but I would venture to say that it needs to be more specific so that we understand that there is now a strong focus on online education, which may not necessarily have been covered prior to COVID-19, and it needs now to be really anchored and emphasized post-COVID-19, because the sector, whether in South Africa or in Africa or globally, will be forced to move into a much more online-based education for the higher education. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Nene. I come back now to Dr. Ngalomba and Dr. Appiah. What new measures has your institution introduced to align the changes that were brought about by COVID-19 pandemic in the teaching and learning environment during online education?
Okay, thank you, Prof. There are some measures which have been instituted by the Open University of Tanzania. As I said before, currently the Open University, they embark on a purely online mode where students, they do their program purely online. There are some students scattered all over the globe, some from Oman, others in Europe, others in the US. They are doing their programs through that mode, which was not the case prior to the COVID crisis. And another thing is, as I say, lecturing, examination, they are purely done through the online mode. The challenge could be the nature of our classes is that we have massification of students. So to check the authenticity of their identity while they are doing through the online mode, it's a challenge to most of these universities, especially the University of Open University of Tanzania. Let me give a practical example, because currently I'm pursuing Bachelor of Laws from the Open University of Tanzania. There are other initiatives, actually it's not institutional based, but it is from the students themselves. Instead of meeting physically, we have WhatsApp group, we have the other platform online where after lectures, we do meet and discuss through the online mode compared to the previous where you need to meet physically. So there is a measures, both institutional based, but also out of the institutions where students, they can meet and discuss some of the issues which was lectured by the professors through the online mode, regardless of their geographical boundaries. Some, they are from other countries, from other continents. We discuss about the topic together through the online mode, like WhatsApp and other means. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have Dr. Appiah answer the same question.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as we indicated, the pandemic has brought the new normal, and so the direction of our education online is also has come to stay. At the Valley View University, the university is preparing and is almost done submitting graduate programs that can be handled online to the JTech for accreditation, almost done to submit there. So it means that the online learning has become part and parcel of our education system. Our students are also now aware that some part of their assessment are done online. For example, the just ended semester, we had a hybrid where mid-semester was done online. About 20% of the final examination was also online. And so it means that you have a combination, and that is the new era we are in. We no longer go for the traditional face-to-face totally from the beginning of the semester to the end. And so that's what we are doing. Again, we have a sandwich program where our teachers, when they are on vacation, they come to campus to complete their programs to be able to get a top-up for degree. Because of the COVID, the educational calendar changed. And this educational calendar that changed meant that the teachers, at the time that they were supposed to be on campus to complete their education, were also teaching the basic schools. with this we were able to handle them online so that they were able to also have their classes at the same time, teaching and having national assignments. So that is also the new era that is helping with the pandemic. We also have team teaching. Team teaching, the university has about 3 campuses all over. So the online has helped us to be able to engage teachers who teach the same subject area to have team teaching and using the platform. And so you look at the curriculum and then divide them such that I may handle topics 1, 2, 3, another teacher from another campus. So we bring all our students together on the platform to have these courses. And I mentioned earlier that the new era, the new area for this COVID-19 is the fact that now every student admitted, freshers to the continuing students, will have to have at least 2 courses online, mandatory, so that you polish up your online activities. And we continuously train our faculty, students, and all stakeholders on the online activities. And in fact, to crown it all, we have the whole unit now on online learning and headed by professors. So we have seen that as it has come to stay. It's not going. And therefore a unit to ensure that we're doing the right thing has been established, with the university administrators giving all the support that is needed to ensure that our online teaching and learning will be effective for the university to grow. And from my previous speaker, the main thing is about commitment of resources to ensure that the right infrastructure are put in place. And we've opened up, our computer labs have been expanded, because even in Ghana, the Nursing and Midwifery Council examinations are done purely online. They don't do any other thing but online. So, and as an institution running such a program, we have expanded our computer lab to have more computers, and discussions ongoing with the Students' Representative Council to procure easy and then cheaper, let's say, having access to tablets, and then so that they can have the Moodle right away on admission. You have the Moodle on your tablet that you can launch into it, easy access, so that when you are asked to do assignments or projects or any other thing, it will be easy for you, because that is where the university has reached. And so online learning has been integrated into the Valley View University teaching and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. How have these measures then been supported at a national level or regional level, whether by a raft of new policies, increased budgets, increased infrastructure, and the like? How have they been supported?
Yes, I stated earlier that the GTech and then the Ministry of Education and all that they have vested interest in these activities. So they always conduct workshops to enhance the capacity of those involved in this area. And so nationally, I learned there's a framework that is being developed to guide all universities to be on the same platform, so that no university overtakes the other. Even though we're in a private institution, we should be able to match with those in the government establishments. And so this framework is to guide all of us so that we do the right thing. It has supported only that we don't have funds from government, a major area. But we believe and hope that as they do continuous discussions, there will be a way out to support us when it comes to funding, because it's a major area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. P. Thank you, Dr. Ngalomba. Thank you, Dr. Nene. Now, let me move on now to Esther from Europe to give us the European experience. And my first question to you, Esther, is how is quality assurance of online education addressed at the policy level in Europe?
Thank you, Dr. Lenga. Thank you for your invitation to be here today with all of you. Good afternoon. And I'm very honored to share our findings and our experience with all of you, and I hope it will be useful for all of you. And for my previous speakers, thank you very much, because you have also sent some messages I would like to share with you, because the main challenges that you have been facing are more or less the same that we are facing in Europe. But going back to your question, Dr. Lenga, I would like to begin first of all with one idea that is related to the flexibility, and one of my previous speakers has done a direct reflection on this. And I would like to say that historically, distance learning contributed to the flexibility of learning from the beginning. And we've got some records that in 1728, we've got the first experience with this correspondence course organized by Caleb Phillips in Boston to the present experiences where we've got fully online universities. And of course, we were living, and we are still living, the pandemic. And well, COVID-19 has provoked some changes in the higher education sector, as all of you know. But besides, it's important to say that digital technologies, that they were here before the COVID-19, and digital technologies has changed the way we produce, share, and preserve and reuse the knowledge. That's something important. So consequently, some changes should be done, for example, at quality assurance level or at policy level when talking about e-learning, distance learning, blended learning, etc. Because as you have already said, we've got different definitions going around on this aspect. At the European policy level, the Conference of Ministries of Higher Education included for the very first time the concept of digital and blended education in the Paris Communiqué in 2018. And this document highlighted the importance of the digital and blended education with appropriate quality assurance in order to enhance lifelong learning, flexible learning, foster digital skills and competence, among others. Then, 2 years later, we've got that in Rome Communiqué, it was raised a commitment to support higher education institutions using digital technologies for learning, teaching, and assessment. And another aspect relevant is linked to the development of digital skills and competences for all. That's something really important at the European level. And recently, the European Commission has published and updated the Digital Education Action Plan for the period between 2021 and 2027. And this document includes the European Commission's vision for high quality, inclusive, and accessible digital education in Europe, which defines 2 strategic priorities: to foster a high-performing digital education system and also to enhance digital skills and competences for the digital age. But focusing on quality assurance of e-learning provision, as all of you know, there's a wide variety of quality assurance activities. Some agencies include the same procedures, the evaluation of all type of provision. Others organize them in a separate way with different methodologies, standards. Some agencies organize program accreditation, other ones do the institutional accreditation, etc., and etc. But above all, we've got the European standards and guidelines that form the baseline. These European standards and guidelines are the core for quality assurance in the European higher education area. And specifically, the European standards and guidelines states that they apply to all higher education offered in the European higher education area, regardless of the mode of study or place of delivery. So this includes e-learning. And there's another important element there that says that all types of e-learning should be considered, as well as all phases included in a learning process, which includes the assessment that, as my previous colleagues has already said, this is a really relevant issue, the assessment. European standards and guidelines are an excellent document to guide on quality assurance under different perspectives, but there was a necessity for an appropriate interpretation for using them under the e-learning perspective. So as our presenter has already said before, ENQA launched a working group between 2016 and 2018 that analyzes that the European standards and guidelines. So that the group agreed that European standards and guidelines are equally applicable to all modes of teaching and learning. And that's something really, really important to say. And the main output that it's the document Considerations for Quality Assurance of E-Learning Provision, that it's openly published at ENQA's website, provides some recommendations to quality assurance agency in order to improve their methodologies, while higher education institutions can also have more information there in order to know how to adapt their internal quality assurance system to guarantee the teaching and learning process. But if we focus on national criteria, we have to accept that not all of the national criteria can be adequate to measure the quality of e-learning provision. For example, we've got some criteria related to the ratio of staff-student ratio, square meter per student, dropout rate, etc. So maybe we have to look at them and see if they are applicable to e-learning. ENQA's working group report can support institutional reflections because the challenge is to understand what is the good student experience in e-learning. We do not have to forget this idea. We need to provide a good experience to all the learners. And finally, what makes education of high quality or low quality? I would say that it's not the mode of delivery, because e-learning should be understood as a neutral value.
Thank you, Esther. But I still need to ask you a few more questions, even though you have given us quite a brief. We note that you have been involved in the ENQA Working Group 8 on quality assurance of e-learning. We would want you to briefly share with us the findings of the group specifically, because I know there are a raft of guidelines that you gave or guidance needed for assuring the quality of online education. If you don't mind, just very briefly. I know there are quite a number.
Yeah, I put highlights. Maybe I can say the top 3 or top 5 elements. Yes. That are the most relevant ones. I would say that they have already been said before with the previous speakers. So I'm really happy that the worries, well, maybe I'm not happy because of the worries, but we are in the same, or we are listening the same music. So that's something good. And the first element, I would say that what is the most important thing? You know that in the European higher education area, there's something really important for us, which is the student-centered learning. And we've got a special standard that it's linked to student-centered learning, teaching and assessment. And that's something really, really important. Because I think that it was Professor Nene that was commenting before. It is really important to have a really good instructional design, because it is important to guarantee that students or learners are going to achieve the pretended or the design learning outcomes, okay? So that's something important. And institutions should bear in mind that digitizing content alone does not lead automatically to a successful educational setting. So maybe there should be something behind, and we have to think about which are the best activities in order to guarantee these learning outcomes. It is also really important, the e-assessment. The worry is that also Dr. Appiah, sorry if I have pronounced wrongly, has already said, and it's important to include protective measures to guarantee that learner authentication and work authorship is warranted. Student support, it's something really important. You have already mentioned Students should have this tutoring pedagogically and technological and also administrative elements should be covered and should be adapted to the e-learning environment. So once again, probably the mechanisms that are already working in a face-to-face way of doing things is not going to be the proper one in an online education. Teaching staff, it's something very, very important. It should be skilled and well supported. And we are talking about from the pedagogical and technological sides. So that's something important too. If I may add something more to policy, for quality assurance, institutions also should analyze their overall strategy and see if e-learning is embedded there. If not, probably they have to adapt something or revise something or check if it's included in their daily life. Ethical and legal considerations are important. We are talking about protection data, intellectual property rights. We were talking before about materials. That's something important. We have to protect the authors of those materials. And from the external perspective, the external quality assurance perspective, I would say that quality assurance agencies should be flexible. They should design methodologies, way of doing things that permit the inclusion of new modes of teaching and learning. So that's something important. So quality assurance agencies should be also innovative in a way. And they could include a specific criteria, indicators, guidelines, frameworks. And finally, also from the external perspective, I would highlight the aspects related to the peer review. We need experts with expertise in e-learning, and they should be trained also. So we need to have more experts on the field of e-learning. That's something important. Otherwise, we are going to provide not appropriate feedback to institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question, now that you touched on some of the challenges, and you said some were similar to what the other speakers have said, my last question then to you would that you briefly share with us the experience Europe has had on internal quality assurance in times of COVID-19 in the recent past. The lessons learned that need to be taken forward with regard to quality online education, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I can explain which is the situation and how our system, I'm representing Catalonia, this is a region of Spain, but I would say that what it has been happening in our region, it could be comparable to the rest of the country or to other countries in Europe. Of course, in our system, we've got one fully online university, which is the Open University in Catalonia, which is really well known around Europe. And it was a really good partner because they teach to other institutions and providing some guidance on how to adapt the internal quality assurance system and so on. What was the strategy in our region? First of all, and my Dr. Nene has already said, we have to bear in mind that we were in an exceptional period, this exceptional remote teaching. So we were flexible here. We cannot ask more to higher education institutions because professors were working really hard in order to adapt everything to an online format. And there was something behind, but it was really important, that was to safeguarding the students' rights. So that was something important for the higher education system in the country. Having said that, the institutions tried to adapt their the programs. There was a special focus on the teaching and learning process. There was also a special focus on training professors very quickly on how to adapt their syllabus, their activities, etc. We have to say that, well, in general, in Catalonia, the institutions are working with Moodle and also with Blackboard, so they have to adapt everything to that virtual learning environment. And we asked very specifically to have an appropriate public information for students. It was really important to inform them what are going to be the activities, how they are going to be organized, etc., etc. So that's something very important. Also, in relation with student support, there was also support to students, especially to that ones that didn't have computers and so on. So some higher education institutions were providing some devices to students, or etc. And there was a special focus on internship and final projects, especially on special areas of knowledge as nursery, medicine, or other type of internships that the system tried to say, okay, let's see if we can postpone them as far as we can. If not, we can look for other strategies, but having this focus on analyzing the achievement of learning outcomes. So in a sense, they were doing a follow-up. It was mandatory to do a follow-up during this period. We are going to review this follow-up in 2022. Also, there was a strong follow-up of the adaptation of the policies, but that was done at policy level by the Catalan government. But we try to be very flexible. And obviously, if there's going to be a permanent change in the program, because e-learning and hybrid models, etc., or blended learning is going to stay more frequently in the system, they have to follow the regular procedures. So we are going to evaluate them, and then they will have to demonstrate that they've got the internal quality assurance system adapted to this new normal that is going to be, well, we can say that new normal will be next year. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, members of the panel. We have been able to benefit a lot from your sharing. And now it is time for us to have our audience, the participants who have joined us, to make comments, ask questions to the panelists, and any of you can be able to share. And I encourage the members of the forum who have joined us to send in your comments or questions through the chat channel or chat function. But as we wait for the members of the forum to submit their questions, we have a few of the members who have already sent their questions to us. And I would want to start asking this question to Dr. Nene, who is from the Council of Higher Education in South Africa. For a long time, online education, online qualifications, so to speak, were perceived to be from diploma mills and considered to be of poor quality compared to face-to-face or even blended learning. How then can we instill within our countries, within the continental region, that actually online learning and the qualifications therefrom are actually acceptable? I would want us to have some response from Dr. Nene. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. This is quite an interesting question. I would say we're at a stage in the higher education sector globally where such questions would unfortunately be nullified by the environment that we find ourselves in, where the advancement in technology means that we can now do things around quality assurance of the online qualifications that we couldn't do perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. For example, we can now find ways, as Dr. Appiah actually outlined, of ensuring first that the person who's taking the assessment is the right person, and that there's minimal cheating taking place, and that there is the security around the assessment itself, such that the students who are being assessed can be proud and can be viewed as having been properly assessed using standards and guidelines that are of such quality that they are comparable to face-to-face assessment and provision. So I would say that we have no choice but to now push for a new perhaps design of our standards to really truly highlight the importance and the feasibility of quality assuring the online education mechanisms of teaching. But the previous speaker, in fact, has highlighted what I think is a very important issue, and that is these technologies have existed for some time, at least some of them, but the adoption has not been as quick as it should have been. Before the COVID-19, in the South African case, and I believe globally, we were consumed by this notion of a fourth industrial revolution, which then propelled us to think more creatively around what it is that we could be doing to integrate these teaching technologies into the classroom such that we are on par with the rest of the world. So I don't necessarily think this is going to be a problem going forward. I think, in fact, we are now moving in that direction where our standards are now responding to online education, where quality assurance frameworks and policies are also responding to that. Those who are not necessarily keeping up with this would not, in my view, be because of an ideological resistance to this. It would be simply because of access to technologies that enable them to really be on par with online technologies. I don't think qualifications online or online qualifications are going to be regarded as of poor quality or uncomparable to face-to-face. In fact, I think going forward, the reverse might be true.
Thank you, Dr. Nene. Now we go to Dr. Ngalomba. The assessment procedures of online teaching are difficult. Are there any specific strategies that can make it effective? Dr. Ngalomba.
Yes, first of all, I would like to say that most of these tools, they are not Africa-based, actually.
And maybe also Dr. Appiah can chip in on that. Thank you.
Yes, there is the opportunity to make assessment tools to be effective, because we can develop our own depending on our context, especially in African context. What we have currently, for example, we are still using Zoom, which is developed somewhere, but we are using it in our context. But also, there is the opportunity to use the technology, because as you might be aware, most of our students are coming from rural areas. Some of them, they don't have internet. So the technology can provide the text-based solution where the lecturer or the professor, instead of using the internet, can use a text-based modality where you can send the information with regard to the code to the normal cell phones. Also, the issue of, I do appreciate, okay, we have the recorded lecture. Yes, that is okay, because that will provide even to those people who don't have internet for sometimes in a day, they can go back and visit and revisit, and they can replay the recorded lecture. One thing I wanted to say is that the issue of M&E, the evaluation. Currently, at our university, we are having the evaluation tool, which is administered towards the end of the semester, where after 17 weeks, then the students are getting opportunity to evaluate their lecturers with regard to the teaching and learning process. But the trend is, I think we can copy it from the corporate or to the, from the tourism sector. I think we are aware of the TripAdvisor.com, where if you visit like a facility, like a hotel, or you use airline, you can immediately evaluate the services you got from the service provider. I think we can copy it at universities, where we should allow our students to give evaluation immediately after the lecture, instead of waiting towards the end of the semester. Thank you, Prof.
Dr. Appiah?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. In fact, the one who asked the question is very right. It's difficult to set online questions because you want to protect the questions like that it is not going to be easily accessed from somewhere. And so one of the measures that we can take as higher education institutions is to be able to create bank of questions, question bank. When we create a question bank, we have enough in the bank such that we can randomize them severally, such that people who are even learning together will have different questions dropping for them. And so it's a way. I also know that there are specialists who are able to set questions. During the beginning of the pandemic, when the GenTech gave us the enabling environment to go online, if you are an institution with the capacity to go online, we invited the Pearson Incorporation to the university, Valley View University, and they came to showcase their products. But they had a lot of ways and they had a lot of banks covering almost all subject areas that we could purchase. They gave us the opportunity to have trial versions, and it all goes back to the funds. Funding was another issue. And so we have specialists that we can tap from. There are individuals who are able to set questions like that. You will not be able to easily get answers from anywhere. We can also subscribe to bank of questions that are already in the system. As I mentioned, Pearson Incorporation, then we can do that. Another way that we can also help is the kind of question, the structure that we ask. Dr. Galumba mentioned that when you set the questions and they are so easy, you know, some questions are just recall questions, so easy that you can have everybody getting 100 over 100 or 50 over 50. The questions should be the ones that can stimulate the individual's critical thinking ability to be able to apply. So higher order questions are encouraged. It's difficult, but we need to spend time to have that exercise alone. Institutions can do that. You can call experts together. Within a week or two, we can come up with questions, different questions, and put them together to be able to help. Because the major problem of people not believing in online learning is the fact that they think people can easily cheat, people can easily go away. Another measure we can put where we have it to protect the questions that have been put online. So that, you know, as we do this, the students we are teaching, we want them to also become innovative. They are also innovating ways to break into, crack down, so that they can get access to the questions because they want to make A's and the other higher grades. And so we need to protect the questions so that no student, whoever, even a highly technical person, cannot break through. And also having the trustworthiness in our own system, our IT team, having the trustworthiness so that where we trust them to the point that they will not allow anything to slip by, where people can easily go to them and then be able to get access to the questions. So I think these are some of the measures that we can take as institutions to protect our questions and then create credibility for our questions when our students sit for the exams online. Thank you.
We do congratulate you, Dr. Appiah and Dr. Ngalomba, because your institutions seem to have empowered online teaching and learning by building capacity, both human and also infrastructure. But the question is, what is the attitude of the facilitators and students? Do they embrace this?
Okay,
Pick it and then, oh, sorry.
And then on top of that, why I'm asking
with
that question also is, please take note, online teaching, for those who are committed, the loading is heavy on the teacher, and also the time involvement, private time involvement on the learner, then go ahead and respond. Thank you.
Hello, Prof. Yes, Simon
Hello,
here.
hello, I'm through, yes.
Yes. As I said before, that if you take the profile of most of the students in these institutions, they are in the year 20s, 30s. They are millennials. They are digital natives. The perception towards the digital online way of learning is positive in the sense that they are, actually, they are conversant with this digital platform. With regard to lecturers, there's a mixed perception towards the digital online way of learning. But I think we need to conduct a study, for example, in our institution, maybe to include even the management, or officials. How do they perceive the online? Because for me, I think it's a platform. Actually, it will reduce the workload to professors because they don't have to go there. They can sit at their comfort zone, and then they can teach hundreds of students or thousands of students. And actually, they can use the rest of their time to do other like research-based activities or something. I think we cannot avoid having the online mode in our generation, especially during the COVID and post-COVID period. So online learning is here to stay. We need to embrace that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Now I would want to ask Esther a question that has just been sent in by participants. Do you have examples of some specific tools that can be used to monitor and evaluate the quality of e-learning?
Thank you for this question.
Do you want me to repeat the question, or you're okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, thank
you. Which tool we've got? We've got, obviously, as I have already said, the European standards and guidelines, and this document that is that we provided to all the system, to the European higher education area, where it provides some ideas of which are the relevant things or the things that have to be been done or you have to think about. Okay, in this way, in Spain, we work at Spanish level with different quality assurance agencies, and we translate those standards, those considerations into more practical guidance for the designing and the assessment of the design of degree programs. And then obviously we also have, particularly in our agency, we have included some elements in our methodology. For example, the virtual learning environment should be robust. It should guarantee the connectivity of people in relation with the assessment. There should be a proper design, as previous speakers were explaining. There should be some protective measures, so in order to guarantee that students are the right ones, are not substituted by other ones. When talking about the instructional design, it is really important and to have a proper design. So what we analyze, or ask experts to analyze, if with the activities is guaranteed the learning outcomes. For example, do they've got some debate groups, forum groups, in order to exchange opinions, to learn from each other's, etc. Do they've got any type of teamwork activities in order to guarantee this competence with this teamwork, etc., etc. So we've got a set of elements that are included in our methodology, And it is important to say that we've got the same methodology and the same standards for all types of degrees. So we don't have a double level of evaluation for face-to-face education and online education. We've got the same criteria, the same standards, but we specifically focus on the particularities. For example, another example are indicators. We cannot count in the same way the graduate ratio, because students following online education normally takes the double of time than in traditional education. So those type of things are included in the methodology. But I cannot provide you with a proper list right now because I will have to, well, explain you a lot of things. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Esther. It's understandable. I think they have also been given the website where they can get the detailed document of the report that the group worked on from EU HAQAA. Now, I would want to ask again, lots of the questions are coming for Dr. Pia and Dr. Galomba because of the institutions being interested on how to assure quality on learning. The question that is coming now is whether the lecturers in your institutions have what it takes to carry out online teaching activities. And if they are newly recruited, then how do you actually develop them and bring them on board? And how long does that process take? Thank you.
Thank you very much. For Valley View University, the whole process of online teaching and learning began with training, building capacity of faculty and students. And so the e-learning team trained faculty consistently throughout and then developed manual. We have a manual on e-learning. And anytime you can visit the manual to know what is expected of you, how to upload your notes, how to upload all your materials, how to upload your questions, your assignments and all that. So the manual is there. Number two, the training, as I indicated, the training is consistent, whether you have been trained before or not. Every semester, as I speak with you from 9th and 8th and 9th of June, there's going to be faculty orientation, and e-learning training is part of it. Whether you are continuing faculty or you are newly recruited faculty, training is given to you. The university IT team has also developed YouTube videos that you look at them, and then they are so educative and interactive, such that when you listen over and over, you are able to be guided on what to do as a faculty. There's also a team there assisting faculty and students. We go there and they will help you to upload your materials if you have challenges, especially those who are new. And as time goes on, they monitor you and you become very good. In fact, once you are teaching, somebody comes online to check, and you may even get a message, your volume is too low, increase it. Your content is too small, can you increase the font size? So this is what has been put in place, and it is helping a lot. In fact, I used not to know a lot about online teaching, but I learned from them, and I always learn because every time there is a new measure. Even when you finish setting your questions, they are there to help you how to upload it so that the day you want it to come, it will be visible to students. So that is what has been going on in the institution to build the capacity of faculty and students alike. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Galomba, would you want to add something?
Yes, Prof. From university I'm working with is that the online training is a must for all faculties and administrative staff, where whether you are continuing or the new entrants, you are supposed to undergo the training on online teaching and learning. Students also, they are given training during their orientation week. When they report for their university education, they are given orientation. Also, there's links provided to students and faculty where they can access some help anytime if they wish to do so. The There's also the round-the-clock support, 24/7 support services, where if you are stuck, then you can give a call or you can drop a message through the WhatsApp group where you can get assistance anytime, regardless of where you come from. So at least, yes, it is promising that we have that in place. However, that is not uniform across the country. Because there are some universities, especially the conventional one, they just proceed with what they're doing. They're still embarking on the conventional way. Some of their staff, they are not trained to do the online training, especially here in Tanzania. Thank you.
Thank you. From my end, I don't seem to have any more questions, unless I have missed some. And I think I have tried as much as possible to get as many of the questions as possible. Thank you, Dr. Apia. Thank you, Dr. Ngalomba. Sorry about that pronunciation. Thank you, Dr. Nene. And thank you, Esther, for sharing your experiences with us. I really appreciate having been your moderator, and thank you for the effort that you have made, because I know I have been very fast in some of the questions, and maybe you missed a few things, but actually you did as good because you answered precisely, and we are happy about that. To our audience, these proceedings have been recorded and they will be available sometime in the near future. Meanwhile, I would want to hand over this meeting to Professor Ehile, the Secretary General of AAU, to give us his closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Florence. But what I wanted to suggest is that there may be others who are part of the audience who may also have some other contributions in some areas which may not have been touched. We could read the chat panel since we still have a few more minutes, and then if there are issues coming up, we could deal with them.
Dr. Makuku, I have been actually engaging myself with the chat, public chat.
Right.
As they came in, we were noting down with my colleagues, and I was addressing those questions also. And looking at the question and answer public chat, I believe we have exhausted, unless somebody prompts me that I have left out some. Most of them actually are very good comments coming from the audience, and even responses from our own panelists. And I thought we cannot read all these comments because they are quite a number, and they are very good indeed and enriching, and they could actually be compiled together in the written documents for publication and publicizing to the audience. Unless otherwise advised, I think we are okay that way.
Thank you very much. So I think Prof. Ehile can go ahead and give the closing remarks. Prof. Ehile. Apio, can you see him?
I think he needs to have his microphone rights enabled.
It's okay. Let me enable it again.
I'm trying to check on Prof. Ehile, please, so that.
Okay, one second.
Thank you.
It should be enabled now, so it should be with us.
Okay.
Professor Ehile?
Yes.
We are looking for you.
It is not easy. I moved from PRICNAC to HAQAA to PRICNAC. So, okay, thank you, Dr. Makuku, thank you, Apio. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Our HAQAA webinar session has now come successfully to an end. I would like to thank our wonderful panelists once again for having given us more insight in quality assurance online teaching and learning, as well as sharing the various initiatives to keep the respective institutions' door open during COVID-19 pandemic. I would also like to thank all participants for their contribution and inputs, and also for their patience. Today's activity comes as the third of a series of webinars performed in the framework of HAQAA2 initiative. Therefore, we are looking forward to seeing you next time on our platform for the upcoming activities. I will finally like to seize this opportunity to invite all African higher education stakeholders to attend AAU upcoming quadrennial general conference scheduled from 5th to 8th July on the theme, the future of higher education in Africa. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to once again thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Ehile. And I think we are done. Thank you to everyone once again. Apio, are we not done? Anna, Eloy, the rest of the team, Sarah, thank you for the teamwork, and to our panelists too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Batu.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a lovely afternoon or evening.
Good night. Good night.